This an all-out blitz, real hard hits, them other podcast trash, we gon' make them all quit. We cover all the topics with intelligence and logic. I know you wanna score, but ID gon' stop it. We from Texas, so that mean that we Texans. Breaking down the X's and O's, our profession. No complaining, just training, you see the progression. They had a Pro Bowl for talk shows, we get selected. We gon' celebrate every win like a birthday. Ray J with the news, first with all the updates. Spin move on the competition, yeah, we juking them. You not really in touch if you not tuning in. This is Crenshaw, Briggs VT. We want the touchdown, we not trying to go for 3. And it's best if you get up out the street, cause them bulls out the pen and they bout to stampede.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Texans Fan Battle Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Matthew Briggs, and tonight we have a special guest. But before we get into him, let me introduce you to my amazing trio. First off, I got the space legend, Mr. VT,
What's going on, guys?
and always since day one, I got my A1, Mr. Crenshaw. Say what's up to the folks.
What up, everybody? How y'all doing tonight?
And guys, we got a special guest coming from NBC Sports. He talks everything fantasy football and draft. We got Mr. Connor Rogers. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me. How are you?
We're great. Thanks for coming on. Did you enjoy the draft?
Oh, it's great. Love the draft. A lot of surprises, at least in round one this year. I thought this was an eventful draft.
Same. I thought this was the most.
Of course, for you guys.
Right.
You kidding me? You guys had the biggest surprise of anybody.
Right. Well, before we jump into Texans draft, what was the biggest outside of the Texans move that you thought this whole draft?
I think Will Levis's slide really kind of flipped the draft upside down, because everybody kind of sits there and goes, okay, the top, 10 will go like this when you factor in 4 quarterbacks going in it, and these are the players that'll fall. And with Levis sliding and Hendon Hooker not going in the first round, it felt like none of that really happened. The offensive line run went early. The corners went early. Bijan Robinson, viewed as maybe a top 3, top 5 player in this draft, he went in the top 10 at the running back position. So I think for me, the story was probably not only Levis falling, but the little runs. We had 4 wide receivers in a row in the first round. I don't think that's happened in the modern era as well. So really just the stare down between teams and when everybody decided to blink.
And the draft of defensive linemen, man, it was such a great draft if you needed a D lineman, because they were just going left and right. Felt like Oprah, you get one.
Yeah,
it was nuts.
It was a great edge class, and teams kind of sat there and said, you know what, we're just going to go with the good players rather than reaching on a lot of needs.
Yeah. So who did you have? Did you have Anthony Richardson or Will Levis first?
Richardson was one of the picks I got right in my final mock draft.
Okay.
I kind of knew the Colts were using Levis as a lot of smoke, and when you get that close to the draft, it's one of those situations that if you hear the guy's name too much the 7 days leading up to it, it's probably not real. It happened to the Texans a little bit. Everybody started to have Levis going to the Texans at 2 if they were going to take a quarterback. Then it happened to the Colts. And then when you kind of look at it, you kind of recalibrate yourself and go, man, Anthony Richardson is too talented to fall out of these top 5 picks. Somebody's trying to hope that he falls. And obviously that didn't end up happening.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Texans. So a lot of people did not think they knew what was happening down there in Houston. Some people had Tyree Wilson going number 2, us trading out number 2. Like you said, Will Levis at 2. So did the CJ Stroud pick surprise you?
I think it did. I think the aggressive nature to make sure they made everybody happy, right? You look at D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico Ryans gets there, great hire. But D'Amico Ryans needs his front 4 to be firing on all cylinders for the defense to work. If they're not, and I witnessed this, guys. I'm in the New York market when Robert Saleh came over from the 49ers, very similar style of defense and came from the same place and similar personnel. That first year with the Jets, his defense was in a bad place. He didn't have the pass rushers for any of it to work, and that affected the back end the Jets defense was awful. And then year 2, he had a lot of his guys, and the defense had a complete turnaround from what he saw, and he was preaching patience. And I think D'Amico comes into a division that you feel like you can compete in, and he looked around the roster and said, I'm going to need a guy that offenses are going to have to focus on for up front for my defense to really operate. And you got that guy in Will Anderson, while also Nick Caserio, how many years can you go without having that franchise quarterback? One thing I was telling a lot of people leading up to the draft, ownership, a big variable in this. How do you sell a plan to ownership that is, hey, we're going to trot Davis Mills out there again? You got to sell tickets, you got to sell hope, and you got to sell a plan. And CJ Stroud at quarterback is a real football franchise plan, while Will Anderson helps out the head coach immediately, not just in the long term, but in the short term.
Yeah, VT was preaching Hannah and Cal McNair all way to the draft, so he completely agrees with you. Last week, I don't know if you saw, but we had your colleague, Mr. Eric Fraughton, on this show because he gave the Texans a D. We were kind of a little upset with him. We kind of talked, yeah, all right, a lot of upset with him. We kind of talked him into, we talked him up to a D plus. He changed his mind a little bit. So what would you grade this Texans draft now that it's all said and done?
I'm going back and looking and want to be consistent here. I gave them a B, the Texans. I wanted to look at what we did on Stock Exchange.
Fair.
I gave them a B. I factored in the trade, too. So that's factoring everything that they gave up to make the move, and it still came out with a B. And how can I sit here and give them anything less than a B when Will Anderson was my top player in the entire draft? CJ Stroud was my QB2 and my 8th overall player. And the draft is deeper than that. When you look at what they were able to do, getting Henry Tua as late as they did, I mean, he's somebody that I ranked 86th overall. They got him at 167. You got Juice Scruggs, and I think some people were surprised how early he went, but you had a need at starting center, and you want to get that youth movement going on the interior of the offensive line, somebody playing next to Kenyon Green. So, I mean, I look at what the Texans did, and you sit there and go, they solved major needs. They got talent. They found some value. Yes, you could say they gave up a lot, but they have a surplus of capital because of the Deshaun Watson trade. And at some point, you're not making 8 million draft picks. You got to go up and get players that you feel you're a little bit more certain about. And this was a draft class that you talk to a lot of teams, and they sit there and go, it's maybe 8 first-round grades for NFL teams. So you went up and you got what you think is 2 first-round caliber players in the draft that you probably wouldn't have got one if you sat there at 12.
I mean, arguably, you can argue about CJ Stroud being the top of his position, but Will Anderson is for sure the best edge. So you got
so too.
2 of the best positions that you need in this league, right? I mean, that's the way to the win in the league is a hard edge rusher and quarterback play, and that's 2 things that the Texans didn't have for years, and so it's changing. I gave it an A minus. These guys gave it A and A plus, but yeah, I mean B is totally understand, especially the trade. I get a lot of people think it's a lot more, but I mean we did get our 3rd round back, but you know not the same value. But yeah, I think that's a good grade. BT, do you have anything for Mr. Rogers here?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the B when you're factoring the trade. I do believe that we overpaid, but I think that they basically knew exactly what we wanted to do, and they knew that we weren't going to walk away from it. This was sort of the draft day, Will Anderson, no matter what type of deal, and the Cardinals knew it, and they took advantage of that. My question to you is, what do you feel about Hutchinson? Because I'm very high on Hutchinson. PFF graded him as the 2nd highest receiver in the draft. And I think that wait a year or so that he could potentially be a wide receiver 1. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy for saying that he's a 6th round pick, but he has the measurables. He has a very low drop rate, right? It's under 4%. I think a lot of people are looking at that game against Texas and judging that one critical drop throughout his entire career on one drop. So I'm curious what your thoughts on Hutchinson.
It was another value pick for me. I had him at 163, and I know they got him a lot later than that. They got him at 205. So I looked at this wide receiver class, and I think because it lacked star talent, a lot of people overlooked how much depth it had. And when you watch Hutchinson play, he played a physical brand of football. He was featured in the Iowa State passing attack. He's somebody that my biggest question, to answer your point of how do you transform into a number one guy at the next level, I think he needs to improve his play speed, right? Because of how sticky and physical corners are at the next level. He's going to deal with a lot more contact. He's going to deal with a lot more physicality. But that's something that his game can be built on as well. And I mean, when you're taking a wide receiver out of the top 200, I know they took him in the 6th round. You're hoping that guy could be a possession number 3, right? You don't need him to be a superhero right away. You have John Mechie coming back. You like the explosive nature of a guy like Tank Dell. You hope that Hutchinson can provide you depth, size, some physicality as well. So that was when you get a guy, 40 spots later than when I had him. I love the value of that. I thought they really did that twice. They did it with him and they did it with Henry To'oTo'o. And those guys, to me, at a minimum, are the first line off the bench in the future, but can probably be spot starters as well. I actually thought To'oTo'o was a future starter, while Hutchinson I liked on the back end of a wide receiver depth chart as a possession guy with a little bit of size.
Okay.
I like it. Crenshaw, you got anything for Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, I want to know, what do you think about Tank? Like, as far as his career, you think he's going to last a while, or is he going to have a short career?
It's fascinating, right? We just don't get players this size at the NFL level. And it goes to show you how talented Tank was, because there's really nobody in the NFL, or not consistently, playing at his weight. Yet he went in the top 70 because he was that good of a college player. And it's not just a gadget guy. It's the ability to win over the top, tracking. I love the head and shoulder fakes, the way he could sell vertical routes. He could be a good special teams player as well. In Houston's offense, he was the offense, right? He got 1 million targets. They used him in motion so he wouldn't get hands on him at the line of scrimmage. They found a lot of free releases for him. Dana Holgorsen was excellent at that. And to be fair to Tank, he earned that. There's a reason he was that guy, because he was that dude on the offense that was an explosive play machine. So this is one where I'm really fascinated to watch how his career ends up, because he is an outlier, right? Like Bryce Young being a small quarterback in this draft. A lot of different guys had different outlier reasons. Tank Dell's size is an outlier, but the bottom line is, you look at this league, whether it's a Jalen Waddle or a lot of different guys that have come in recent years. Zay Flowers went in the 1st round. These really small wide receivers are protected in this era of football. You can't hit defenseless wide receivers over the middle of the field anymore. It's not the same game. So that's why the value of a guy like Tank has gone up. And even if he's your number 3, you have a creative offensive coordinator, hopefully, Bobby Slowick, that can scheme him up some quick touches and just get the ball in his hands and get your big blockers out in front. I think Tank will be really, really impactful in that role. It's something where you wonder, when this team has a true number 1 target on the outside that coverages have to focus on, that would create more space for Tank Dell. So it might be a slower rookie year, because he's kind of the guy you look at and go, we can't let him beat us. He's an explosive threat in this offense. But as the Texans add more skill talent throughout this retooling phase in the next 2 years, that's when things can really open up for Tank.
So I love that you brought up Bobby Slowick. He had a great beast of a wide receiver in Deebo Samuel. Could you see Tank Dell having that kind of a role where he does a lot of sweeps out of the backfield type of plays for him?
That's what you want, exactly what you want to do. Shallow crossers, screens. The 49ers offense traditionally for years, even before Bobby had the kind of role he does, they like to overload a side and kind of clear out space. And that's what made things so easy for Brock Purdy. And when you look at the Texans offense, they should be operating the same way, where things are a little easier for CJ Stroud out of the gate. So you want to do for rookie quarterbacks, where you could do 3 reads, but they're the same side of the field. So it's 1, 2, 3. I don't have to check over to the other side early in the phase. That's where you like Tank Dell, because those quick hitting throws, if you give him space, he can make a guy miss. He can take off for, 5 yards into 40 yards, things like that. So I really do. You look at the defined roles of guys in this offense. I think Mechie can be a really good possession wide receiver because of his ability to separate and play inside outside. While Tank, you like the free releases and go, how do we create space for Tank Dell? Mechie can create his own space in the routes. Tank is a guy that vertically he can, but underneath, you'd like to clear out all that room so he has catch and run opportunities.
And kind of like you mentioned down there in the University of Houston, use them in motion. I think that they still utilize that. It'll be a recipe for success. So I love I know a lot of Texans fans weren't happy where we got him, but like you said, he was a great return specialist. He has a Swiss Army knife for the Texans, so I'm happy with it.
Right? Or
Go
don't you
ahead.
guys have to think like you look at the Texans offense? I always do this when we cover the draft each year and you go through rosters and I go, what scares you? Right? That's what you ask yourself in an offense. The Texans needed somebody that scares you. That when they have the ball, or they're in motion, it's eye candy to the linebackers and safeties, and then they have to cheat over to that guy. Like the Texans, yeah, sure, it might have been a little early, and I get the response because he's a lighter guy, and you always worry about guys like that translating. But at least the Texans line up now, and you go, okay, that's a guy that scares me. Will Anderson on defense is a guy we have to game plan around. Tank Dell is somebody that I don't want them giving him free touches with the ball in his hands. And that's a sign of progress to me.
Well, and also say Damian Pierce having a big game, we're going to stack the box. What better than to have Tank Dell there in the slot or out on the outside doing some? I mean, there's so many ways to utilize that tool. I think it was a great pickup. So I mean, I loved it, but like again, Texans fans, you can never. I don't know if you ever been on Texans Twitter, but it's a little toxic. You can never please anybody. My question to you: what did you think about the Horton pickup?
Little mixed bag on that one. Horton's a weird player for me. You watch TCU's defense, right, and you go, okay, this is a unit that really played cohesive football this year, and Horton had some splash games. I thought he didn't play very well against Michigan, and that was a game I really wanted to see him go out and thrive in and thrive on. And then you look at him at the Senior Bowl, and I thought he could have done more. So I think when you look at Horton, he's somebody that had some bright spots throughout this college football season for a great defense. And he's somebody that you think can play as a power end at times. He can contain. He's not somebody that's just this pass rush specialist kind of player. But I wanted to see more from him at the Senior Bowl when you had a lot of guys down there, whether it's, Will McDonald beating up on Darnell Wright or players like that just got more. Adatome Adeboire was somebody that had a really, really good week out there. So he's a tough one to figure out for me. I know they drafted Horton at 109. I want to see ultimately where I ended up on him in this draft. I had him at 151. So he was one of the rare picks that I thought was a little early for me. But once again, it comes down to what kind of defense you're running and what you're going to ask of him. And they probably thought, hey, we got our true 3-down pass rush guru specialist. We can play the run in Will Anderson. Now we need to get a little grittier in the trenches with somebody like Horton. So I'm very curious to see what he could do at the next level.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, he was 6'4", around 275. I mean,
that's a big end.
Right. Just a big monster to take up some gaps, to give some of the double coverage to help Will Anderson and maybe Rankin or Ridgeway, whoever wins the defensive tackle spot, to kind of free up some space that way. So
you guys are going to like Rankins. I mean, we got to watch him closely here with the Jets for 2 years, and he's a damn good football player that's underappreciated in the league. He's a vocal guy. He's explosive against the run, but when it's pass rush time, that's when food is on the table, I would say. You notice a little bit of a different gear with him. Rankins is somebody that'll make a difference for that interior and really help the young guys on the edges.
I love the pick, especially in that D'Amico Ryan scheme. He did great with Robert Saleh, so
yeah,
kind of hand in hand.
Good fit.
So yeah. Well, Connor, I know you had to head out here, so we want to say thank you for coming on. Why don't you tell our fans where we can find you on social media and what else you got cooking so that way we can follow you?
Sure. At Connor J. Rogers on Twitter. Post everything there. The NFL Stock Exchange podcast, we do all the lead up to the NFL draft, and we're still going. We're going to start the next class in a couple of weeks here. It gets pretty crazy. So you can find us on YouTube and then everything written for NBC Sports. It was great talking to you guys. I appreciate you having me on, and best of luck the rest of the way. All right.
Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Tell Eric that he graded us too harshly.
Please.
Yeah, I got a 5 throats out. I got to give him a buzz. I can't. A D to a D plus is no, it's not fair. You guys deserve better than that. You got it from me. So I'll see you guys.
Thank you, Bubby. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Well, good episode there from Connor Rogers. Guys, make sure you follow him on NBC Sports and the NFL Draft Exchange, Stock Exchange. We'll have another special guest who should be coming on, Curtis from the Curtis Podcast Network. I know Crenshaw is hoping we got Curtis Lowe so we can, do a jam session, but so far, not happening. Well,
He'll
guys,
be on.
Well,
Oh, I just want to say he'll be on in a minute. It'll be like 2 or 5 minutes, but he'll be jumping on shortly.
all right. Well, guys, what did you think of Connor's draft grade and comments of the Texans?
I think his comments was fair. He laid it out pretty good, just like his colleague did as well. I think his grade is more accurate than the D or the D plus that we gotten. It made sense about what he said. With Tank, we're gonna need someone that people's gonna be scared of, and right now we don't have that guy. So I like what he said.
BT, what about you, bro?
I think what the way that he graded us was actually, in my opinion, more spot on. Like, I know that I'm more of a fan, so yes, I graded him. I graded the draft at A plus, but I can understand why others being a little more objective than I am, and yes, just a little bit, would grade it a B, and it's because of the unknown of where we will be next year, and so I understand that the fact that we gave up that much draft capital to go up, people are going to grade that accordingly. I believe, however, that it won't make a difference because I believe that we will win 7 or more games, and therefore the first round pick that we gave up won't be as valuable as many people that graded it poor. Like, Eric basically believes we'll be picking in the top 3 or top 5. I don't believe that. And I think that if you don't believe that we're picking the top 3 or top 5, giving up a first round pick isn't as bad as people make it out to be. And that's why I think grading it a B is good. Grading it a D basically says that you're predicting that we're definitely going to be one of the worst teams in football next year. And I don't think that's the case.
All right. Let me ask you a question, VT. Say hypothetically we still have our first round pick, and we won 7 games, like you're predicting. Do you think fans will be mad that we won that many, or they would rather lose, win 3 games and have a high pick? What do you think?
I don't think fans will be upset. I think that, listen, there's always be fans who upset at something, so I should say that. But I think that most fans want to see progress. What that means is that now that we've given up that first round pick, they want us to be good because it doesn't actually do us any good at this point to lose games. It doesn't make any point in tanking because the only way that we get a high pick in the first round is for the Cleveland pick. So it's all based on Cleveland. So if we tank, we're not doing anything, right? So I think every single fan, barring the few 5% of the outliers, but every single fan is going to want us to see winning 7, 8, 9 plus games because the only benefit for us not winning as many games is in the later rounds, like the second round or third round, to get a higher pick. But it doesn't help us in the first because our first is only Cleveland's.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my bad, Matt. But
go ahead.
okay. Now this is just like we was a couple years ago when we thought we was gonna win a bunch of games, won 4, and the pick went to someone else. So we're not hoping a little deja vu is gonna be here now. And that was, Deshaun last season when we didn't own our first round pick. And we went out and made all those moves and everything, and it still didn't help out.
I mean, are you basically saying that we made all these moves, and if we have 4 games like that, like, is that what your kind of scenario is? Because if we win 4 games, right, people are going to be pissed, right? The only way that this trade works is that we have to do better than last year, and I think doing better than last year means not just 5 games; it means you're quote unquote pretty close to mediocre. A bad team is basically anyone that's like 4 or 5 teams, like what we were last year. 7 teams and onwards is more mediocre. 7, 8 is a range of mediocrity, right? And if we're not at least mediocre, people are going to complain. But I think that I don't see us winning less than 7 games unless everything goes wrong. That means the quarterback isn't working, the Will Anderson isn't working, the head coach isn't working, the OC isn't working. Nothing is working properly, and that doesn't mean that we're going to be like 5-1 or something like the first games or anything like that. I think that we will probably only win 1 or 2 games in the first 5 because we're still figuring shit out. But if you look at what happened to the Jags last year, the Jags weren't even good until in the second half. And I think that's what I see happening with us. I think in the first 7 games or so, we might only win 1 game. But I think we'll add up those wins in the later half of the season. And I think fans have got to have reasonable expectations about that.
Okay, what if it is end up being the exact same way where the quarterback had a great season in Deshaun, but we lost a lot of close games? Now, what if that happened this year? Will fans still be upset, or they're like, okay, it's progress, but we're not winning fucking games?
I guess you have to ask why. So is it because still the run game? So like last year we were the worst team when it came to run stopping, right? If Will Anderson isn't stopping the run, they'll be upset if he's not doing that because yes, he's gonna get after the quarterback. So if he has like 8+ sacks, people will be okay with that. But if he's not also stopping the run, which is one of the things we're doing, right? When we traded up, it wasn't just get after the passer; he has to help stop the run. Then they'll be upset on, was Will Anderson the right pick? Did we give up enough capital? That's when we're going to have to be patient, which I know we're not. Most fan bases are impatient, but that's to see if he can develop to be someone that can get after the quarterback and stop the run. Also, does that mean that Sheldon Rankins isn't stopping the run? Does that mean that we have to add a top DT next year? I think fans also will, most fans, at least the ones that aren't just looking at the stat box and actually looking at the games, will see, like, if the quarterback is doing well, what is going wrong around it, right? And if we can identify what's going wrong, like, for example, we're not able to stop the run game, then that's something we can attack and we can fix. If we don't know what's wrong because everything is going wrong, yeah, everyone's going to be upset, including me.
All right. Well, while we got over VT's rant about Texans fans, let's just introduce our next guest, Mr. Curtis Brown from the Curtis Podcast Network. Curtis, how's it going?
Guys, I'm having a blast already. I can tell you that. I'm doing well. It's been a pretty solid day for me. Off work, so always a good day to be off work.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is.
Well, you caught the middle of Crenshaw's question. I'll kick it off to you. If we do only win about 4 games, do you think the fans are going to revolt and be upset like they were during the Deshaun era?
Absolutely. I think the Texans fans are starved for success. We had glimpses of it with Deshaun in the early years, and we had a little bit of sustained success during the Gary Kubiak era. And people are just kind of clamoring for that. They see how weak the division is, and they're like, man, we're literally a couple pieces away from just winning this division. So absolutely, I think fans would be distraught. Do I think it's realistic that 5 or 6 wins, 4, 5, 6 wins? Yeah, that's pretty realistic. Yeah. I mean, like, we don't have a team to make a deep playoff run right now.
Do you think that 7 wins is real? That's my number. My magic number is 7. And the reason why it's 7 is because I think that's when to me, that's what most fans will consider mediocre, right? And I think that anything less than 7, I think most fans will say we didn't do what we needed to do this year. And I'm not saying that we go in a playoff run. I don't think we can win the division. I think the Jags own this. I hate saying that because I'm still gonna cap on Twitter and say that the Jags suck. Anyone who's watching this, trust me, I'm still gonna say my shit. But I will say that the Jags probably will win this division this year. However, I think that we could come in second place. I think the way that this division runs is Jags, Texans, Colts, Titans.
Yeah.
And I think that having 7 and possibly a few more wins, like 8 or so, is possible. So are you saying it's really 5-6? Or are you saying it's 7-8 or anywhere between 6 and 8?
I'm saying 5-6 is a realistic, like, fans should expect this, because I think there were several games last year that we should have won if we had just mediocre
coach.
Right, yeah. Right. Well, I mean, different coach, but Davis.
Right. That's what I was going to say too. A different quarterback than Davis Mills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the cookie crumbles just a slight different way. And we're looking at, 5 or 6 wins last year. And, then we're having a slightly different conversation right now. But, I mean, realistically, fellas, 5 or 6, I could see 7, and 7 would definitely lock up that second place spot in the South this year. I think the Titans are going to take a step back even again. And the Colts are a little bit more lost than people give them credit for. They're going to have a lot of development time with Anthony Richardson. Right. So they're going to be having some weird Thursday night against the Broncos kind of games, and it's just going to be pain to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you, Curtis. My floor is the lowest is 6. And And that's just because I always say scheming fixes everything, and I think that is going to fix a lot of our problems. But it's the first year. A lot of these guys are rookies, so there's going to be some growing pains. So I probably do see 5 or 6 wins. Is that a problem? I don't think so, because like BT said, that's a progress. These guys are young. D'Amico's the first time head coach. I mean, look at New York. Yes, they fell apart at the end last year, the Jets, but they tremendous turnaround. Took them 2 years. Everybody praises the 49ers, and everybody's getting people from the Niners for coaching, but it took time for Kyle Shanahan. It took 3 years to finally make the playoffs, and then in the Eagles, it's a slow progress. It took them 3 years before they got to or 2 years before they got to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it takes time, but I think it's going to be a better spot than we have been, because again, scheming fixes everything. But I think this draft was a perfect draft for that scheme. All the guys that we picked fit that mold of what Bobby Slowick and D'Amico Ryans needs for those schemes.
Oh yeah, I mean they went out and they got some dudes. I mean, any Texans fan who tells you that they're not excited about picks 1 and 2 of the draft, you need to check their pulse.
Exactly.
Figure out what the hell's going on there. But I mean, there's definitely some picks that they made where I was like, you could have waited, like Juice Scruggs, maybe a little bit. Maybe the center class was getting a little bit of a run on it, and that kind of necessitated the early drafting of Mr. Scruggs. But I mean, for the most part, it was a really solid class.
Well, the rumor was on the Juice Scruggs that the Denver pick, who was right after the Texans at 63, was about to trade up and get Juice Scruggs. So that's why we jumped over and got them. But
they already got Cushenberry. That's just so unnecessary.
Right.
Can I ask this question? And this is to everyone, but I want to ask this also to Matt specifically, because you talked about the line, right? You started there. Today, in case anyone doesn't know, we extended Shaq Mason. We gave him a 3-year deal. What that means is that we are starting to put a line that could potentially have CJ Stroud have, for most of the people that are here for his entire rookie career, right? So it's not like we're going to keep swapping out dudes on the O-line. That's a positive, right? We already locked up Larry Tunsil for 3 years, and he'll likely sign again. We are planning so far to extend Titus Howard in the offseason, and likely that will be another 3 years. We got Shaq Mason. We have now Kenyon Green and Juice Scruggs. They're on rookie contracts. So for the most part, we're looking for at least 3, and we'll probably re-sign our bookends. I'm sorry, not our bookends, but you know what I'm saying, Titus Howard, etc. Right. So I think we've invested quite a bit in our offensive line. I think that one of the biggest issues last year was that our left guard and center positions, and I think that potential will be fixed, right? We got the Colts guy to be our new O-line coach. We're switching to zone blocking. My question now to you guys after hearing all that is, do you think that we could have a top 10 line? And do you think that CJ Stroud's biggest issue was under pressure? Do you think we're going to see the problems result of CJ Stroud under pressure? Or do you think our line can actually keep him protected where we can see the best of CJ Stroud?
So that's one of the reasons why we picked Juice Scruggs, right? He was the best pass blocking center in the draft, rated 93 PFF and pass protection. So I think that's what they're game planning. Top 10, maybe. I say top 15 at least. The only reason why is because look at last year, the Colts, they fell tremendously. A whole bunch of good lines. The Patriots line, they all fall. So the play for a lot of top lines throughout the year has fallen. And we, like you said, we went to zone blocking, which is a great way to improve any line. So I think, I say top 15. Crenshaw, what about you? What do you think?
Well, what they getting paid, they need to be a top 10 offensive line. But I'm going to go with I say 12 because, like Matt said, the zone blocking fits a lot of things. Zone blocking hide a lot of players that aren't good on the O line. So I say top 12, and they're going to help out the quarterback. And I think he's going to do good because I don't want him to get those early happy feet, and we're going to start criticizing him real fast.
Yeah. Most definitely. Curtis, what about you, bub?
All right, so zone blocking makes a lineman's life so much easier. Instead of having to worry about your gap responsibilities or do I have to go reach the backer this play, it's literally, okay, who's to my right? Who's to my left? I have to get one of those two people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to make everything dramatically simpler. Do I think that it's going to help us get a top 10 line? I think that's a little optimistic. Top 15 makes sense. But I expect some of those lines that had a little bit of a falling off last year to kind of bounce back. I mean, the Colts pay so much money for their offensive line, and they invested some capital in theirs too. So I expect theirs to be a little bit of a bounce back year for them in terms of the offensive line play. The Jaguars have a really solid offensive line, so I think we'll be a much improved bunch on the offensive line, and I think Kenyon Green will benefit from Shaq Mason and Laramie Tunsil being there. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of brightness, but top 10 is a little bit pushing it for me.
I mean, yeah, and like, we always say that Kenyon Green was terrible last year, which he was. But that garbage system, like you said, Curtis, it relies on the left tackle and the center. And last year we had god awful center and BT's boy,
Quisenberry.
Yeah, Quisenberry. I think Scruggs automatically improves that, at least in the pass blocking, and that's what he felt at. Green's problem wasn't really the run. In the run, he did excel a little bit, but the pass blocking was what hurt him. And again, zone blocking. So now, if you can learn from how to do a great pass block from Scruggs, Laramie Tunsil, and Howard, and now you got Shaq Mason with a guy who had a top 15, and I know last year it was ranked 28 for the Colts. Yeah. But the years previous he was top 10, top 15. So he has a recipe for success on the offensive line. So you mix all together, it's hard not to say that they're going to improve, especially from what they were ranked last year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I think there's going to be growing pains for every rookie we've got. So I think everybody needs to understand that and be like, hey, we can't expect them to come out and be all pro level immediately. Right. So there's going to be some growing pains. He might be the best, graded center at pass block in the whole class, but he hadn't played in the NFL yet.
True. I get that. Right. But
so we don't know.
It's still a way impactful player than Quisenberry. Quisenberry is one of the reasons why Mills got killed 90% of the game.
Yeah.
So, and plus because he sucks, but
yeah.
But speaking of rookies, I jumped on a space with VT a couple days ago, and they were talking about CJ Stroud's stat line. So, Curtis, I'll kick it off with you. What do you think his stat line would be, and what is a kind of a good measuring stick for his rookie year?
Okay, good measuring stick. You want interceptions below like 12. That gives you a little wiggle room to be like, all right, we can tweak a few things and fix that and get that in single digits. And then we got a quarterback on our hands that's going to take care of the ball. Realistically, though, I think he'll probably be about 3,500 yards, maybe to 4,000, depending on if he plays the full 17-game season. Probably in the neighborhood of like 25 touchdowns, probably 12 to 14 interceptions. I think he's going to have some growing pain games because there are some pretty solid defenses in the NFL. That's not to say, he can't go out there and absolutely annihilate a team, but I mean, he's a rookie. They're going to do stuff to try to confuse him, flush him out. make him look stupid. And some teams are going to be very, very adept at that. So, yeah, about 3,500, 400, 4,000 yards, something like that.
All right. Crenshaw, what about you? What do you think, and what's a good measuring stick?
Well, interceptions, believe it or not, a lot of great quarterbacks have a lot of interceptions. So I'm not going to be too obsessed with interceptions unless it's just boneheaded ones. If it's a tip ball, I can live with that. But I'm going to go with 3,750 yards and about 25 touchdowns because not many rookies get over 25 touchdowns in the NFL history. So I'm going to go with that right there. And I give him 2 rushing touchdowns, from the 1 yard line, 5 yard line. And I think that's a solid season right there for him.
Okay.
I agree.
BT, I knew you already said it on that space we were on, but go ahead and remind everybody what you think.
Yeah, I think he's going to do about 3,500 yards. I think that our run game is going to be strong with Pierce and Singletary. I also think the UDFA, I call him X to the V. His name is Valade, but I call him X to the V. That's so much cooler. But I think all 3 of them are going to have a heavy run game. So I think that we are going to be using that a lot, which means I also think they're going to be used in the red zone. So when it comes to touchdowns, as well as passing yards, I think that we're talking 3,500 yards through the air for CJ, and I think the touchdowns are right around 20. Why I'm not saying 25 is because I think that Dameon Pierce is going to run in a decent amount. So I also think that Singletary will. And in the interception side, I actually think he won't throw a ton of interceptions. Yes, this is the NFL, not college, but I think he'll throw 10 or less. And the reason why I'm saying that is because his accuracy has been really the best in college. Now, of course, NFL defenses are insane, and I understand that. But someone that only turns the ball over 3 or 5 times or so a season in the college, you multiply by 3 or even say 4. But the thing is, I actually don't think he's going to throw a ton of interceptions. Now, could I be wrong there? Yeah, but I think that I think my measurement on yards and touchdowns, that's pretty much. I really do think I'm solid on that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm saying ballpark, y'all. I said 3,200. I said 30 touchdowns and about 17 interceptions, which is a pretty good.
Wow.
Yeah. I think him and Dalton Schultz is just a great red zone threat, especially if they stack the box, which I think they will. Like you said, we're going to be a run heavy team. It's hard not to circle Dameon Pierce 8 times on the defense, say this is a guy you need to watch out for, and just do a bootleg to the tight end in the end zone, kind of like the Owen Daniels day with Matt Schaub. So I think we can see a lot of those. I think Dalton Schultz probably gets 9 touchdowns this year, if not more.
Let me ask you all a question.
Right.
All right. So with the wide receivers on the team, do you think it's possible? Because I feel like as Texans fans, we have a lot of hope about some of these guys that either haven't gotten to play at all, like Mechie or some of the rookies, or we're hoping that Nico Collins can stay healthy and take a step forward. Do you think there's some sort of, like, obviously we hope that they can take a step forward, I guess, but like, do you think they might hold CJ Stroud back in his rookie year?
I don't, because like I've been preaching since day one, scheming. I think the scheme fits perfect of the West Coast. I think if Nico Collins stays healthy and on the field, we saw a glimpse of it last year, right? Like he could be the number 1 guy, but he just could never stay healthy. And also you had a quarterback who threw to him like he was 8 foot tall instead of 6'3". So I think if he stays healthy, I think he has a great year and goes over 1,000 yards. So I don't think it hurts it. Crenshaw, what were you going to say?
I think it depends on where the buy is at. If the buy is early, I can see him holding him back. But if the buy is late, they might let it rip a little bit. But I won't be mad if they do hold him back because I want this guy here for the long run, not the short run.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. BT?
I don't think that the wide receiving room is as bad as people think. Bobby Trees, who didn't have a lot of yards because of who the quarterback was. They were barely passing. And so I think that we could see Robert Woods having anywhere between a 700 or even a close to 1,000 yards. And I don't think that's just me being a fan. Like, I actually think that he'll probably be wide receiver one, and I see that as a strong possibility. Nico Collins, listen, I'm not shitting on him. I have to preface this every single time because in the space people always yell at me. Got his signed rookie jersey before we even got the number 12 over there. It's 84. Not shitting on him, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy either year. So I could see Xavier Hutchinson kind of taking over that role. Not right away or anything, but I think that everyone is sleeping on Xavier Hutchinson. I think we got a steal out of Xavier Hutchinson. I'm very high on him. So if Nico Collins can't stay healthy, I think that Xavier can be that other dude. John Mechie, as long as he's healthy, I think that he could be a beast out there. And obviously Tank Dell is going to be that speedster who's going to cut on a dime and run those jet sweeps and actually be that dump off guy that even Connor said, can take those 5 yards and turn it into 50. So I think that with the group of receivers that we have, we're not as bad as people think. Now, do we have that true wide receiver one like a Jamar Chase or a Stephon Diggs? No. But the thing is, when you look at all of these receivers combined, I do think it's enough to get a real good look on what CJ Stroud should be. And then next year, whoever we get, let's say it's Ibuka, right? I'm probably murdering his name. I apologize. But say it's Ibuka, right? Then you have another true wide receiver one. And now your room, honestly, is pretty damn good. So I do think we're not as bad in shape in the wide receiver room as people think at all.
Okay.
I think Dalton Schultz is going to be the key ingredient to this offense. I think he's going to have a not as dominant as George Kittle, but close to it. I think he ends up being a top 5 tight end in the entire league just because of his experience, the scheme, and what's the rookie's favorite target? The tight end.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be everything successful for Dalton Schultz. But BT, I think you're going to hate me on this one. I was going to try to save it for the preseason, but I think Bobby Trees gets cut preseason. I really do. I think
what?
Yes,
I guaranteed money too. I don't see that happening.
I think Rodgers, Brown, and all these young guys. I mean, are we going to keep eight receivers?
I think you should have. I think you should have hit the hot take button before you said that, because I think. Listen, I didn't love the Robert Woods pickup, but I don't think that he's going to get cut. Are we keeping 8 receivers? No, we're probably keeping six. But I don't think Noah Brown potentially doesn't make it. I don't know if Amari Rodgers makes it. I don't know if Smith makes it. But I don't think they're getting Robert Woods. I think they got Robert Woods specifically because he knows the scheme and because he's going to be the vet presence teaching everyone else what's going on. And trust me, Max, I agree with you. Listen, Bobby Trees is not a great receiver. But the thing is, you also have to teach the stuff to the rookies, and he's going to be that teacher. And I think that he knows the scheme so well that he's going to find himself open because more than other receivers, because he knows that scheme. Just like you say, Matt, scheme fixes everything. Well, when you have someone that actually knows the scheme, where you have other rookies that don't, right? Even Nico Collins, he doesn't know the scheme yet. So he's the only one in that receiving room that knows it. So he's going to find himself open. He's the one that's going to be the leader. And I see him leading this receiving group. I will say this about Schultz, though. I think you're right about Schultz having the most amount of receptions, but I don't think that leads to the most amount of yards because I think he's a dump off where you're throwing to him to convert on third down. So, he takes at 3rd and 5, he takes it. He may go another 2 yards after catch. So he'll turn that 5 yards into 7 yards. But he's not the guy that's going to turn 5 yards into 50 like a Tank Dell. So he'll have the most amount of receptions, but not yards.
Well, I mean, that's George Kittle and Travis Kelce, too. They're not the guys who take 5 yards into 50 yards either. But they're guys who find a way to get open. And I think that's Schultz. I don't think it's going to be, anything massive, but I think he's going to be a top 5 type. And that's not hard to do in this league anymore, right? I mean, to be a top 5 out of Andrews, Kelce, and Kittle, who else is there really?
I mean, there's Njoku.
Njoku hasn't really done nothing in the last couple of years, really, he can't stay healthy. And the guy from Gronkowski's retired. Brait is no longer there.
I mean, it depends on how you feel about Darren Waller and Ingram.
Yeah, there you go. Darren Waller, too. Darren Waller moved over to the Giants. I think he's going to get a lot of yards with Daniel Jones using him as a massive receiver, essentially. So, I listen, like I'm saying, I think Schultz is going to be a huge playmaker for us. All I'm saying is that it won't lead to yards necessarily. Like, I don't see him adding up the yards, but receptions, yes. I think he's going to be probably the number one target on third downs. Like, it makes sense for him to be utilized that way.
I can see Darren Waller being, up there. All depends on that injury. I mean, he's been hit with the injury bug the last couple of years too. So same thing, and that's the only reason why I believe Bobby Trees is going to get cut too, is because he's never had a full in his whole career. He has not played a full year.
No, he played every single game last year.
For the Titans, no, he was out several games.
Did he? I thought he was out for one game, I believe, right?
He was out a couple because they had that Westbrook Ikone for.
Yeah, Westbrook Ikine started a few games.
A couple games. I will say one thing about Robert Woods, and this is Rodney Bryce that brought it up. Woods is a great blocker, though. So in this scheme, blocking is considered critical, right? That is something that both Noah Brown and Robert Woods has. That is the reason why Noah Brown could make it. That is the reason why they signed Robert Woods, though, knowing the scheme as well as being a blocker. So, great point by Rodney Bryce. He's a blocker, and I know that he is not that crazy, flashy talent that you want to see for your wide receiver one. But I think that
I'm not going to be upset either way. We keep him or let him go. I can see us getting. I mean, if Rodgers comes out here and Brown comes out and kills training camp and preseason, and Woods is just still nursing that injuries, I could see him letting him go.
I mean, that's when I want to slap Nick Casario in the face, because he gave him $10 million guaranteed. So we cut him. That $10 million is just in the toilet.
Go ahead, Chris.
All right. So first, our franchise, the Texans franchise, loves to pay money to people.
Right.
I mean, we paid $20 million for David Culley to sit on the sidelines or to sit at home last season. So, I mean, we don't care about handing out.
That's not a cap hit. I mean,
I know, but it's still $20 million you're handing to somebody who has now nothing to do with the organization. So that to me shows a willingness to just cut ties when it looks beneficial. Robert Woods, he's back from that injury. By the end of last season, he had like his best couple games for the Titans all season. So I think he's already back from that injury. I don't think injuries are going to be that big of an issue with him unless he gets hurt again.
And age, that is a higher possibility.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying I can see you go either way. I'm not saying it's for sure a cut, but
right. And I wouldn't be surprised if they cut Robert Woods, not for no other reason other than we got these young dudes who need a shot and who need the work. But I mean, in reality, we do need a vet presence in that wide receiver room, and he is that guy to do that. So I would prefer that he stays on the roster, but it wouldn't surprise me if they cut it.
Yeah.
I think Nico Collins will get cut before Robert Woods get cut.
I think that's highly likely. I think Nico's been on the bubble.
That's
okay. You guys, give me your sits you think going to make the team.
Before anyways, I just want to clarify because I had to look this up. I knew I wasn't wrong on this one. Robert Woods did play at all 17 games, but he didn't start in 2 games. So I don't know. So he was available. He was healthy in all 17 games. He just didn't start in 2 of them. So that I just want to clarify. Sorry, Crenshaw.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Wow, you lost the starting spot.
No.
Westbrook.
Oh yeah, no. Nah, I was just saying. What 6 guys think is going to make the roster for as wide receivers?
For sure. I mean, obviously Dale Hutchinson, and I think Noah Brown is a for sure guy who's going to make the roster as well. The bubble. I think Collins is because rookie year. He's still on a rookie deal, so I think you still keep him there just for a cheap value. But I think guys on the bubble for sure is Rodgers, right? He's a guy who's kind of been tossed around a little bit. everybody was hoping he would make a splash last year, but didn't. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make the cut.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I think Robert Woods. In the beginning, Nico Collins might. No, You said definite, right? So Robert Woods, Tank Dell, John Mechie,
Oh, yeah,
Xavier Hutchinson, and those are the definites, right? Nico Collins, Noah Brown, they're a maybe. Sims is a maybe. Aaron Rodgers is a maybe. Amari Rodgers is a maybe. Those are the rest are maybes. Those are the four that I can see pretty much making the squad. Like I said, Nico, it's a maybe, not just on health, but he doesn't have great separation. He was supposed to be that 6'4", 200-pound contested catch guy. But if you can't stay healthy and you don't have that speed already, right? Like that 40 time showed his speed, but I didn't see it on the field. So if you can't do that, I think Xavier may take his spot too. So Nico Collins is honestly very, very, very questionable to me.
To me, the locks on the roster, Mechie, Dell, Brown. I could see Hutchinson getting practice squatted, but for this purpose, I'll say he makes the active roster. I don't think Sims makes it. I think Woods will make it. And then probably Rodgers, honestly, because I think they would go Rodgers over Sims because Rodgers, while he may not be ultra familiar with this new system, he's been in Houston for a little bit and he has some sort of relationship with the other guys.
Yeah.
I will say, I guess it's Rethral. I don't know how to pronounce that. Is saying Sims can do returns. I mean, honestly, Tank Dell has got to be a returner. I mean, that's one of the best things about Tank Dell, besides his offensive play, is a special teamer. I'm saying that,
and we also brought Tavarius Thomas back too. So
Right.
I mean, he's proven that he can take one back to the house. So
yeah,
right. And I think we have better special teamers there as well. Valladay's fast too. I bet he could be put in that position too. So I don't think Simpson's really a camp body to me. I don't even consider him in the equation. I don't think he makes a squad at all.
So
I don't want Tank Dell doing anything special teams. I need
Oh,
to
you're
save
crazy,
those.
man.
I need to save those hits, man. I don't want him on special teams at all.
I think
maybe
I think
maybe it's like a playoff, how we did Will Fuller, playoff time, but I don't want him taking those hits, man.
I think he's gonna be a Tyreek type of player where that's what he gets most of his first couple of years is special teams, and then he turns it on and becomes the speed receiver that we know he could be. I see him be a Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, that's how he made it. That's how he made his All Pro his first year. So yeah, I can see that.
That's actually what AD, shout out to H-Town Rundown. That's what AD was saying, that he thinks he'll do special teams. But I say the reason why I don't think that will be the case is because look at what they did in order to get him. They not only traded up, but they passed over Cedric Tillman, Josh Downs, and Jalen Hyatt to get him.
Mims too, or was Mims already taken?
I think Mims was already taken up.
Yeah, Mims was already gone.
Yeah,
So they passed over 3 other receivers to get Tank Dell. And so I think they chose him particularly not just for his return ability, but for his playmaking ability right away for CJ Stroud. So I can understand why people think, let him go on special teams and then learn on the offense. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's what they're thinking. I think that he's going to be the hella special teams player. I think that he could bring back a touchdown his very first year as a special teamer. And I think he could have as much as 600 or 700 yards his first year on offense. I think people are diminishing the what he brings to the table because he's a rookie and because he's small. And I think that because we don't have other huge playmakers, that he will get a lot of that shit. Like I really believe he's going to be pretty.
And
big.
the West Coast scheme too. A lot of people are sleeping on the West Coast scheme,
Right.
especially with the sweeps and whatnot that they can utilize his speed with, like Connor was saying. So I kind of agree with you. Well, fellas, like the wise words of Crenshaw, this is the worst part of the show because it's the end. Curtis, man, thank you for coming on. Why don't you tell everybody where we can find you on social media and what you got cooking so that way we can follow you?
All right. You can follow the Curtis Podcast Network on Twitter at Curtis PD Network. All of our stuff is put on YouTube. So if you got YouTube, open it up, search Curtis Podcast Network, or you can search this AFC South show, or, pretty much any AFC South team, and we'll pop up eventually. We're on Facebook, Instagram as well. So we got a live stream of the Jags podcast Duval Thursday coming out tomorrow, and then a For the Shoe Friday going to be dropping early Friday morning. So yeah, that's what we got coming down the pike for the foreseeable future.
All right. Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on that. VT, what about you?
You can find me at Brown Chubby Bear on Twitter, and you can find my articles on fanbattlesports.com. Me and my good friend Leo, that's at Leo is Forgiven on Twitter. We have started recording our spaces and editing them into 45-minute digestible podcasts. So if you only watch this and you're not listening to this and you don't subscribe to us on Spotify or any of the other podcast platforms, go ahead and subscribe to the Texans Fan Battle podcast, because that's where you'll find the stuff that we do. We call it Texans Fan Battle After Hours. It's been pretty fun. You can come on Twitter and engage, and you can be part of that podcast as well. So that's what we got cooking.
Crenshaw, what about you, brother?
Yeah, you can find me at Fifth Ward Crenshaw everywhere. And like VT say, the after hours, it's for the grown and sexy, so get a little kinky in there. Mr. Curtis Brown, are you kin to the Chris Brown, the kicker we used to have?
No, I'm not. That'd be funny though.
It was
No, when I was a senior in high school, there was a Curtis Brown who got drafted by the Steelers and played safety for Texas. And my mom called and freaked out and was like, "Oh my God, you just got drafted!" And I was like, "No, I didn't. Calm down."
All right, guys. Well, until next week, you can check out all my stuff, A1 Day One Texans, and make sure you check out the podcast at Texans Fan Battle podcast on everywhere. And also make sure you check us out on the Fan Battle Sports Network. You can go on the website, www.fanbattlesports.com, and you find all of our great shows like this one, the Colts Fan Battle, the Jaguars Fan Battle, and the Titans Coliseum. So make sure you check that out. And guys, until next week, have a great night.
This is Crenshaw, Briggs, and VT. We want the touchdown. We not trying to go for 3. And it's best